Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Capture Leaders and Their Projects. We asked, they answered. Discover what this means for you. I'm Teresa Resick, the Director of Webinars at AIIM, and AIIM is your host and producer of today's event. And joining me today, also from AIIM, is Kevin Crane, and then we also have Greg Council and Bill Johnson from Parascript. And Parascript is the underwriter of today's webinar, and we thank them very much for their support. And thank you for taking the time to join us today. And as we get started here, I just want to offer a few tips for participating in today's webinar. By joining live, you can resize the different windows that you have in front of you. And across the bottom of your screen is a list of all of the button options we have for you, and one of those is group chat. And feel free to open that so you can message with each other and also with us here at AIIM. In those buttons and also already open on your screen, we do have resources for you to download and access at any time. And do ask questions of the speakers with that Q&A feature, and ask your questions at any time. And we're going to do our best to get to all of them. And we're going to have about 5 to 10 minutes at the end of our webcast, when we will be taking those questions. And there is a survey, and there is that link at the bottom, but it's also going to open on your desktop at the end of the event today. And I truly value your feedback and would greatly appreciate it if you would take a few moments to contribute that to us. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to AIIM.org's Resources Webinars page in just a few days. And before I introduce our panel of speakers, I just wanted to kick things off with a question to everyone who's in the audience right now. And so if you can come up to your computers and sidle up to your keyboard and click the answer that works best for you here. And the question we're starting off with today is, robotic process automation is delivering value in many organizations. Do you have plans for RPA that include processes that are document intensive? So answer here, if you currently are using RPA with advanced capture, currently using RPA without advanced capture, if you're planning to use RPA with advanced capture, planning to use RPA without advanced capture, just have no plans right now for RPA at all, or you just wasn't even aware that that was a possibility. Just let us know your answers there, and then we'll leave this poll up just for a second as I begin to introduce our speakers, and then we'll take a look at those results. But I do just want to introduce our first speaker here. We're going to have Kevin Crane, who's AIIM's content strategist, and he's also the host and producer of AIIM On Air podcast. Kevin is a professional writer, an internationally respected technology analyst, and an award-winning podcast producer. He was named the #1 enterprise content management influencer to follow on Twitter and has listeners and readers worldwide. Now I'm going to move off of the poll question here just so you can see the lineup of speakers that we have with us today. And so introducing our other two folks we have with us. Greg Council is Vice President of Marketing and Product Management at Parascript. And Greg has over 20 years of experience in solution development and marketing within the information management marketplace. And this does include search, content management, and data capture for both on-prem solutions and SaaS. And Bill Johnson is the Vice President of Global Sales at Parascript. And he is an industry expert who's been in the ECM business for over 25 years. And Bill has delivered thousands of solutions to hundreds of clients, and he has owned his own company, so he's been on the client side of business and understands customer pain points well. So let's go back and take a look at those survey results. And again, we had asked, recognizing that RPA is delivering value in many organizations, do you have plans for RPA that include processes? And I invite our first speaker, Kevin Crane, to join me as we take a look at the results here. And it looks like we have some low percentages of people who are currently using RPA, either with or without capture, and a few more are planning to use RPA, but still looking like the larger percentages of either have no plans to use RPA or they just weren't aware of the possibilities. Kevin, does these results
Interesting result
you?
there, Teresa. Yeah, I'm wondering, of the folks that we're not aware of it. I'm wondering if this is the first time that they've even considered or heard about robotic process automation, or it was something that they'd heard of but didn't know it would actually apply to what they do. So perhaps sometime we'll get a chance to dig into this a little bit more deeply. But an interesting result here today.
Well, Kevin, I'm going to turn things over to you just to begin our discussion today.
Well, thank you, Teresa, and hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be part of this AIM webinar discussing the recent AIM Leaders in Capture survey. And as Teresa mentioned, I'll be turning it over to Greg here from Parascript in a moment, who will go over the results in more detail. But to set the stage, over the course of January and February of this year, 2019, AIM surveyed our membership with the specific aim to better understand how organizations are using advanced data capture techniques currently, and what their vision and the plans are for the technologies and capabilities in the future, and where they feel the roadblocks to success are and the avenues to gaining advantage. So what I love about AIM research is that this is a real-world snapshot. 100% of the survey participants are actively involved in either managing the planning, selection, configuration, operation of document capture today. So, and indeed, over 46% of them say they have more than 2 installations. And of those, with only 1 system, about a third say that they've consolidated multiple systems. So what I'm getting at is that this tells me that we're talking with real-world practitioners, and their experiences and opinions are rooted in the day-to-day struggles and successes they experience every day. So I believe that this survey is really an important snapshot and an important perspective, because at AIM, we believe that every organization is on, or should be on, a digital transformation journey. And at the heart of this transformation journey is information. It's the currency that fuels and funds that entire digital transformation journey. And it's the common denominator in things that are really important, like customer experience, business agility, operational excellence, automation. All of these stem from intelligent information management. At the same time, there is a rising tide of information that we all must manage every day. And the growing chaos and confusion associated with this effort really hinders our digital transformation journey. The volume, the velocity, the variety of information stuff within most organizations can often exceed our ability to really keep pace. So these challenges are creating a new demand for information management practices that extend beyond traditional enterprise content management. And if you were at AIM 19, you heard about it. And if you're listening to AIM, you're hearing about it. We call it intelligent information management, a roadmap that provides 3 key capabilities: content services, process services, and analytics services. And the term services here is intentional, because every modern enterprise has to be able to link these capabilities together on the fly to respond to continual demands and changing business environments. And data capture really serves all of these 3 things in content services. Content services is a flexible, modular approach that utilizes content and information wherever, whenever it's needed, independent of where it's stored, and the ability to capture information on paper or in digital format is essential. In process services, these are the tools that fuel everyday workflow and help organizations understand and anticipate and redefine internal and external processes and customer experiences. And again, capture is fundamental to this ability as well. And in analytics services, these are the automated tools that help to prepare information, both structured and unstructured, turning it into business intelligence for better strategy design and decision-making, and to position the organization for advanced techniques in things like RPA or artificial intelligence, machine learning, without first having the ability to capture information, categorize it, save it, understand it. All of these analytic tools are really not possible. To me, it all boils down to this, information. You've got to be able to find it, and you've got to be able to capture it. You've got to be able to find it. You've got to be able to save it, and you've got to be able to use it in more and more thoughtful and strategic ways that will make a difference to the performance of the organization. And this Leaders Capture Survey has been a great snapshot. I know we've all been working on it over the last several weeks. It's a great snapshot into what people are doing today and what they feel the roadblocks and opportunities are and where things are headed in the future. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Greg now, who will dig into the results more deeply and compare and contrast some of the findings from last year and tell us what it all means. So Greg, it's great to have you with us today. Take it away.
Thanks, Kevin. And that is a picture of me in case anybody's wondering. I think we have we'll have another survey just after this, but I'm going to dig into a little bit more of the demographics for those of you that are interested. It usually, I think, looking back, I think this may be it's definitely the third and maybe the fourth Leaders in Capture benchmarking survey that we've done, and I always find it really interesting to see how things have changed. What we're most interested in is tracking the progress of organizations as they adopt technologies that are really around document automation, making sense of data and putting it in a more structured way so they can use it in the organization. What you see here is probably not too shocking in terms of the distribution from a geographical perspective or by an organizational perspective. And what I'd like to see is more involvement in the non-U.S. Types of regions. And so for those of you that are joining us from other parts of the world beyond the United States, I encourage you to get the word out for the next time we do the survey, because we'll definitely do one next year and get more participation and representative data with that. But you can see that we do have representation from Latin America as well as European and other areas, to the degree that we have and that we can. Okay, so now we're going to do the next poll. Teresa?
Sure. Let me go ahead and pull this up here. And we're going to be doing a couple of polls here today, and so please come back to your keyboards and answer this question for us. Is going paperless a major initiative in your organization? And click what applies best here for you. Going paperless is a major effort. Going paperless is being applied strategically to selected processes. Going paperless is a best effort, but not strategic. And going paperless is not as important as processes more efficient. I'm sorry, I misread that. Going paperless is not as important as making processes more efficient. And then there's a selection there that's other. And feel free to use the Q&A feature to type in what that other choice is, to share what that is. But go ahead and select which one best explains where you are in your organization for your initiative for going paperless or just reducing the paper streams that you do have. And I'm just going to give you a moment there to make that answer, and then we're going to go ahead and Greg and I are going to just take a look at the results right here. And Greg, seeing about 44% of the people saying going paperless is being applied strategically to select processes. So that's it's encouraging. There's some work going on there.
Yeah, that's. I think that it's an obvious one, right? Because anytime there's paper involved, you have a slowdown in processes and things. I mean, we all know, or hopefully, but most of us know this concept called sneaker net, which is basically taking and shuttling information manually, walking from one desk to another and sharing that information versus being able to easily distribute it. And so certainly paperless is a key factor in that. And I think that what we're seeing is most organizations are pushing that conversion of paper to something more digital as far afield as possible, so that it's digital well before it enters the organization.
Greg, the one thing that strikes me about this survey is everybody has a strategic direction to go paperless, but they still maintain the page metaphor. And just because you've got a electronic PDF on the screen, we can certainly eliminate the manual processes of matching, sorting, and delivery. But we're still having to interpret with humans the content on that page. So while we may presume to be paperless, we're still paper bound.
Yeah, good point. And I'll actually touch upon that in a little bit. So let's go to the next slide and start talking about what we found in the survey. So one of the questions that we asked was just, we're really interested in how processes are involved and which ones of those that are more or less document intensive are approaching it in terms of automation. So as the previous poll question kind of implied, that a majority of organizations are correctly approaching this in a more strategic manner, looking at the processes that involve paper and trying to figure out what's the best type of form of information. So the net is that, really very few enterprises have any process that is completely paperless. If we were to rank order and compare this to, say, eForms adoption, it is interesting as the top 5 from an eForms deployment perspective almost share the same top 5 in a paperless process. Those being, AP, HR, claims processing, and customer onboarding. And this certainly suggests that there's a likely place to start with these specific processes because you can convert this information into something more structured and shepherd and make these processes more efficient, especially when it comes to digital transformation. So the next question we asked was more specific to eForms technology. Now, eForms technology is the digital analog to paper forms. That's why the word forms is in there. And this question really asked on a business process perspective again, the percentage of those respondents that have deployed eForms technology. Because if you can start with an electronic form, you can completely obviate the paper and the slowing down of processes and the reliance of OCR. So overall, the takeaway here that we see is that there is some progression by about, more or less around 3%, with the most significant increases being those processes that can be controlled via a form-focused process, again, like HR or logistics. So you're going to see some common themes here with these business processes, including customer loyalty, ordering, invoicing. A lot of these things are very, very structured process to begin with, so you can imagine that you can apply structure to the information collection at the very beginning. And most of the processes that I just mentioned have around a 5% increase or more. So we are seeing that type of gradual progression to being able to start in a digital format. Strangely though, onboarding / new account opening didn't really do anything. And this may make sense if there are other ways to onboard, right? So if there is an easier process that you can bring on a new customer or a patient or anything like that, that there are alternatives. Other processes which traditionally don't avail themselves to forms are lower, and this includes things like more complex documents, legal and contracts, or mortgage and loan processing, and all those things that involve a wide variety of documents that range from very, very structured to very unstructured. Okay, so the next question dug a little bit deeper into the deployment of those eForms technology. And really, how much of it is a part of the process as compared 2018 to 2019. So the first one was a really nice bit of detail on which processes, but now we're going to do a comparison. Again, the takeaway here is that there has been progression, but and that's a good thing, right? So the processes that what we see here that we can look at, the accounts payable, records management, manufacturing, logistics are all around. You can see how they progress. So if you look at the yes and planned and not planned, we see a lot of progress on those more traditionally structured processes that involve formats or document type formats where the data is more or less standardized. So you can take that and digitize it or even completely remove the paper format entirely. So again, a deeper look into how these things are adopted, these do suggest that it's a likely or a good place to start when you're looking at digitizing or transforming a process within your organization. Okay, so the next question we are looking at is more how these solutions tend to grow within an organization, looking at whether or not an organization has deployed or is deploying capture that supports more than one business process or more than one department. So personally, I love where this is moving, with more than a quarter of the respondents stating that they've actually centralized capture. And this roughly correlates to what we see overall when we do our client engagements and matching these types of strategies for the adoption of what are commonly called centers of excellence or shared services, where organizations can create significant amounts of leverage, both in terms of getting advantageous contracts. So this is a pricing thing where you're centralizing procurement, but also in development and the deployment of necessary skills, because we know, those of you that know advanced capture, it's not an easy thing to manage. And so once you've developed those skills, it makes sense to leverage those across the organization. Now, the other two following right after indicate that advanced capture is deployed around the organization, but it's not centralized. So this is an okay thing, but these organizations aren't able to get the same amount of leverage and cost savings. And this is kind of a problem with the question itself, but the third big box was other responses. So just digging in, I went and looked at what those responses are, and interestingly enough, some of the responses you could put into that other bucket of centralized capture not our situation entirely. But of the ones remaining, most were indicative of that the organization was still in the early stage of adoption of advanced capture at all. So they were starting small in one department and then letting it grow and getting familiar with it. All right, so next we asked the formats or the types of information that they were processing. So how was an advanced capture type of implementation process, and what are the range? And we're being very simplistic. We're talking about paper or images that started out as paper versus those that are digitally born, things that are converted from Word documents or Excel spreadsheets. In this case, we saw that paper dropped more significantly than did digitally born documents and e-forms, which did see a slight increase. And again, this is just talking about, and this just further reinforces this gradual progression of moving things off of paper into some sort of digital format, whether that be digital documents or scanned images or e-forms. But again, I think it makes more sense that digitally born documents are going to gradually take up the bulk of what we ultimately process within our advanced capture systems, because documents by no means are going away, even though paper is. And that's definitely what Bill was starting to get to, is the container of the information is what you want to look at, or as Joe Shepley from DocuLabs in a really great article that was published this week is talking more about information modalities. And it's really about understanding what modes of information are best suited to a given process or a user experience. Okay, so next we talked about the range of documents and wanted to understand within a given organization, what is that footprint of advanced capture with respect to the range of documents. And you can almost correlate this with the implementation or penetration of advanced capture across an organization into multiple business processes. So expansion of capture operations for more document types is occurring as well, which supports the general trend of applying these technologies to more and more processes overall. So what starts in HR then migrates into accounting, then moves over into operations or manufacturing and whatnot. What I did find interesting is that the relative increase over 2018 occurred at both the bottom and the top range, which suggests that the lower end is more representative of those net new adoption, those organizations that have just started to utilize advanced capture, while the upper range, I think, can be correlated from those that are establishing those shared services, right? So once you have a shared service organization, you can start plugging in this capability into different business departments or business units. All right. So once we get an idea of the general maturity of an organization with respect to the information they use and how they've deployed advanced capture, we're going to start talking about or asking about the technologies and how they go about it. The first one that we asked about was automated classification. Now, this year, as different from last year, I think, was that we went into a lot more detail in terms of what the definition of automated classification is. So that definition being, it's not a rules-based approach where you're looking at and constructing different types of things like keywords or look for this explicitly, but you're letting computer algorithms identify those types of rules. So in this case, generally, the awareness of automated classification has improved significantly over 2018, and I think that's a function of both the amount of articles and just a general exuberance over machine learning and AI in general. And so the number of respondents that are not aware have correspondingly dropped significantly. This naturally translates with an increase in the number of respondents stating that they use automated classification, but still a good percentage of have no plans, which is really interesting given all that interest in machine learning that I just mentioned. And that's typically the thing that is at the core of this automated classification. So any organization that's interested in applying in a very useful way machine learning, automated classification is a natural first step to do that.
Greg, just to amplify on that a little bit, I think additional awareness has occurred in the last couple of years about how important accurate classification is. When we talk to all of our hardware friends, we find that the bulk of the industry is still using batch cover sheets and barcoded separator sheets for documents. And if you get the classification wrong through human classification, it totally messes up your extraction capability. So classification after ingestion is the first process that happens, and automation in this area at higher accuracies provides even greater efficiencies as you go through the capture process that then feeds the workflow. So I think not only is the awareness of the availability of automated classification important, I think it's interesting to see and actually gratifying to me to see that the awareness of the importance of accurate classification as the first step is occurring in the industry.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that as more organizations interact with solution providers around this area, that would be the next step is just that, understanding how the accuracy or the precision of automated classification can actually improve over your manual processes. Because like you said, if you can't properly classify documents, then all the subsequent things just stop. If you can't start your car, you're not going to go anywhere. So this is a question that I always like to ask about is, not necessarily where things are going well, but where things aren't going well. We can often find these little hidden gems of information and knowledge when we ask the negatives rather than the positives, and that's where we grow as an industry and certainly grow as solution providers. This question was just talking about what the biggest drawback or weakness of advanced capture was. And we're sharing this information for all the other vendors too, so you're very much welcome. So every vendor should take note of those top 3 weaknesses because, and actually more than that, because they more or less speak directly to the capabilities or the user experiences that aren't really tracking well with general trends towards the business user adoption or the involvement of the business user. So it very much was a back office, IT-driven, and almost predominantly so, an IT type of focus, where now we're seeing advanced capture concepts and other types of capabilities be infused within the business process where the business user is interacting, and they're expected to participate. And so we are seeing that. I think we're seeing that as evidence here in the shift in expectations of something that is more capable, that delivers on its promise, but it also is easier to use and configure and things like that. So we've still got a long way to go, and that's also showing up in overall general adoptions, because I think that a lot of these things, especially if we look at the second ranked one, which is complexity of configuration, or learning how to use the software, that's a major impediment for any organization that wants to avail themselves of these capabilities. Okay, I think we're on to our next poll.
That we are. And so please come back to your keyboards again. And the question we're asking here is, how long did it take to configure a single business process with advanced capture? And in your organization, are you finding that it takes less than a week, more than a week but less than a month, more than a month but less than 3 months, or more than 3 months? So basically, 1 week, 1 month, 1 quarter, or more than a quarter. So give us your feedback here, and just give you just a moment there, and that's just how long did it take to configure a single business process with advanced capture. And so Greg and Bill, let's take a look at these results here. Looks like we're seeing about a third of our respondents are saying either less than a week or more than 3 months, and then that remaining third is split between that, in the 1 month range or in the 3 month range. And is that typical for what you see?
It depends on, one of the things is, I think that this is definitely going to be a function of the complexity of the overall need. So if I were to put my own thinking on this, which is going to be faulty, the ones that are doing less than a week are the ones that are dealing with more structured forms or structured data that you can do, whereas you start creeping up in here. And it's interesting to see how evenly distributed these are, but I think we can see that if you start creeping up, it's going to be more reflective of more complex types of projects where you're dealing with more complex data. But I am interested, that 33.3, that's a good thing, less than 1 week. That's what we're all shooting for.
From my perspective, having designed, deployed, and supported hundreds of business process applications, one of the design criteria at the macro level is your process, your technical process has to be as flexible as your business process is volatile. So if your business process is changing weekly, monthly, quarterly, you have to be able to adapt and metabolize those changes rapidly in order to keep the process moving. Otherwise, you constantly get more and more behind. So this notion, at least for me, this notion of we used to call it rapid application deployment, but I would call it rapid application adaptability, becomes more and more important in an electronic world because we're not held back by the physical volume of a push cart and a file folder. We're moving at pages and pages and thousands of pages per minute, per day, per hour. So flexibility and the ability to adapt on the fly to a changing business world is critical. And I find this poll question particularly interesting.
All right, so next we get into some deeper concepts dealing with machine learning. So last year we had a similar question. Again, we like to do some benchmarking and see how things progress, so we'll often use the same questions. But we presumed that respondents would really understand what machine learning was, or specifically how it's applied. And in some cases, in our conversations with clients, I know that one person's definition of machine learning is certainly quite different from another. The result, I think, is this year we took the effort to explain what machine learning was, at least our definition of it, which increased the number, I think, of respondents that said they did not use it. So they got a clear understanding of what it was, because I can absolutely tell you, knowing from the technology side, there's often the term that machine learning is often used in places where it shouldn't be. So it can become confusing. But those, in the very satisfied camp, we're still outnumbered by those that were, somewhat satisfied or somewhat dissatisfied or not satisfied at all. Based upon our own experiences with our smart learning capability, which is based on machine learning, I would probably place the blame on general unpreparedness of what it takes to properly implement machine learning within the confines of any type of application or business process, let alone advanced capture. So that would be one area of blame. The other one is basically set expectations on what machine learning is, as these capabilities may have not been machine learning based at all. But on the preparedness side, to put it bluntly, advanced capture has progressed to the point where a significant amount of data science is needed in order to be able to achieve the real results, which are straight through processing of data at a high accuracy rate. So machine learning only intensifies this fact, and we're finding that most organizations don't approach it in that manner. So they're approaching it in much more like a CRM type of fashion where you're just configuring a system functionally, but you're not doing the necessary amount of data analysis at the front end of it and the amount of comparison on the tuning on the backside to be able to really achieve your results.
Greg, I think you're spot on right there. It's really a function of expectation. When we first started talking about AI and machine learning, there was a great deal of anticipation, and I think it was overhyped. And then this notion of data science as a form of analytics to prepare the system, I think that's critical. And getting that message conveyed at I'll call it a practical level is critical to the consumer and the users of understanding what is possible and what is practical. So I think you're right on with the expectation part.
Yeah, let's dig into some more of the machine learning stuff and talk about another aspect of it. This question we asked about whether or not machine learning has simplified configuration and operations. So it's really interesting because a lot of the talk about machine learning is on how it can help you once it's in production, but there's a good aspect or a significant aspect of machine learning that can automate the initial upfront configurations or obviate them altogether. In 2019, so you see here a comparison between 2018 and 2019, so blue being very much, and again, I think that the function of some of this stuff dropping back is a better definition or more clear understanding of what machine learning is doing with, a drop. And so the definitely or, the very much and the somewhat shifted around. And I think this might mirror in some ways, again, misset expectations about what it can do, or, and correspondingly, we're gonna fit into this Gartner hype cycle for those of you that understand it. Adoption is growing, but we still only see about 38% of those interviewed work at organizations where they have advanced capture with machine learning. And I think if we don't correct expectations and properly put machine learning in its place and prepare for the prerequisites involved, we're headed for that dreaded trough of disillusionment where, due to the need to approach machine learning in a different way that is very different from the typical quote-unquote create a template mode of configuration. So it is about the quality of data being prepared in that realm.
Greg, do you think part of that is our fascination with features? We still seem to be focused on features as opposed to result and output.
Yeah, yes, I do, because it's very difficult to understand with any level of assuredness the precision of an advanced capture system in terms of being able to gather and process a large quantity of data straight through, right, with a high accuracy rate. So we often fall upon the next nearest type of proxy, which is features. And then when we look at features, then we focus on the functional configuration of it versus actually going through the level of effort that you need to do to be able to optimize the system. So yeah, I think it's a function of how we buy other types of things. I think it's also a function of the complexity of advanced capture in general. Okay, so now we turn to robotic process automation because we just can't ignore it, even though some of you were not aware of it. And we asked the poll question because the results that we got here, I thought were kind of strange. And maybe this is a function of us looking at a larger market, whereas the practitioners within our benchmarking survey are very, very focused on the advanced capture function at all. So, the deal here is, the net is that, it's involved in about 10% of existing RPA, advanced capture, and, about 25% plan on incorporating it. Again, I think this tracks with our experience where RPA is gradually expanding to document-oriented processes, which typically are more complex. RPA, in its initial adoption, has been focused on the proverbial low-hanging fruit of, very rote, repeatable, non-variant types of processes where it does a very good job, and so you're leaving those more complex processes later in the stage. But I can tell you that the complex processes and automating those are where really the money is made, because those are often the most expensive to conduct and are often the most error-prone. But there's another thing that I think that those on this webinar need to take heed to, because I'm talking to the people that are most familiar with advanced capture, and the above responses, especially where there's no current using RPA with advanced or no plans to use RPA, might suggest that there's a potential disconnect between the organization's, an organization's capture experts, you guys, and the staff that are charged with actually implementing RPA. Now, that may not be the case, but just in case, poke your head up and start talking about these, talking with these guys that are in the RPA side of things. Ask around, because they are definitely going to need your expertise. I can tell you that. We've seen this time and time again.
Greg, Kevin here. I'm curious what your thoughts are. I'm looking through the data about RPA, and it looked like the top reason organizations are using RPA today, of the folks that are using it that responded to the survey, is for records management. How is it applied to records management really quickly? And then the other most popular response was for other. I wonder what some of those others are.
Yeah, we'll have to, what I think will be really useful is to compile the other list and share it as a follow-on, because honestly, I can see records management being a very simple type of shuttling or capturing information if you have a very structured process where the metadata along with that document can be used to automate something like the I can't even say the word, but the management, lifetime management of that information life cycle and disposition of it. There's the word, disposition, from a records management perspective. But it certainly does not reflect the information that we have from other sources of analysts that focus on robotic process automation and what they're actually doing. Most of these things are being deployed in IT provisioning and those types of processes where it's very, very straightforward, and it's very easy to program the specific tasks involved.
And let's not forget that the fewer errors we release from capture means a lower requirement for bots to handle those exceptions.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. Let's talk a little bit more about RPA, because we're not done yet. This question was really about, for those that are using RPA with advanced capture or in the planning stages, what processes will be involved. So again, we're looking at automation, advanced capture, and the processes that are done. And certainly one way of dealing with document-oriented processes when attempting to implement RPA is to remove as much as possible of the document container, quote unquote, in favor of starting from a structured base of information. So again, documents aren't going away, but there are different types of modalities, to borrow from Joe Shepley again, of a document-based information. So if we compare the plans for RPA plus this advanced capture with the top paperless processes, and also look at the eForms adoption, 3 of those same 5 processes are representative: AP, HR, and onboarding. Again, these are processes that really avail themselves to removing the structured paper form in preference of an eForm, so that you can collect that information ahead and not even have to deal with the paper and OCR. So this suggests that those eForms will experience growth, especially as RPA is adopted in those areas where it can aid with simplifying access to the traditional document-based or scanned data. All right, we always like to be future-oriented because that's just how we are. So this next question was just asking, and we asked this last year too, within each organization, what was the direction of document processing automation over the next 3 years? And so we had a number of different types of responses available. Really, it's all in support of automation. So it's automation, automation, automation. And here we see increases across the board for expanding advanced capture, replacing paper with e-forms, and processing more digitally born documents. So it's automation in support of another buzzword of digital transformation. So, implied within that is you are digital and not paper-based. Expansion of digital documents and expansion of capture to other scanned documents so are the number one and number two when it comes to the percentage increase. So when you just look at the pure percentage increase relative from last year to this year, those are the top two, while digital documents and e-forms are number one and number two in total percentage of respondents. So again, they still support an overall theme of progress of using these technologies to support what are arguably digital transformation and process efficiency efforts. So I wanted to offer some takeaways, and I know that Phil will want to chime in here and riff on some of these as well. 3 of them, and maybe there's a lot more, but we stick to 3, is I want to talk back about the paperless bit. It doesn't really mean ridding the organization of documents. And again, borrowing from Joe Shefley, look at your business processes with an eye towards document-based information or information in general as information modalities. And try to focus automation or whatever you want to do, document conversion, based on the best format to support both the collection of information as well as how that information is presented to users of the system, because we're not going to completely remove human beings just yet. So it's really important, and oftentimes we humans are we've been using paper and that type of format of information for thousands of years. So it's not going away, it's just doing it in the best way possible. The second one is around the machine learning aspect. I think this is in my opinion, this is the case of if I had a nickel, I'd be a gazillionaire, because I think the race to add this capability will lead some organizations to rush to failure, unfortunately. And they'll do that because they're not changing their approach to start with the data and apply data science principles to advanced capture, where advanced capture is focused on precision. It's not focused on features and functionality. So simply put, if you're going to adopt ML, and specifically for advanced capture, you need to understand how it is applied to a given task, regardless. So that's advanced capture, but it's for any type of application or business process. But you have to focus on that all-important input data, how it's going to be used. If you have information that's biased, if you have information that's not representative, it's going to lead to bad results. And if you don't understand what information bias is, we do have materials to help educate you on that, because it's very important. The last one is overall, RPA. It's certainly still the darling and driving renewed interest in stuff that Parascript offers, or in general document automation. And for that, we're very thankful. But the focus is still clearly on automating those low-hanging fruit tasks, the low variation processes. But don't expect that to stay the same. And this is where everyone on this call will increasingly become involved if they haven't been already. It will change, because the key processes that make the most money, that are most critical for organizations to have error-free and to be most efficient, are the more complex ones that do typically involve document-oriented data.
One of the things that that intrigues me, Greg, is we talk about digital transformation, and we've seen survey results in this presentation that talks about the undeniable enthusiasm and focus on that. But if we look at our progress in terms of digital maturity, there are several studies and surveys out there that place the United States at the head of the pack as far as achieving, its level of digital maturity, and then some of the other Western states are closing in on us. But what's interesting to me is that even as advanced as we are and with all the technology we have and with all the enthusiasm and focus, we've only achieved 17% of our potential digital maturity coefficient, which means we've got a long way to go. And I see energy and focus and enthusiasm, and I see capability and tools. I wonder why we aren't further along than we are in 2019.
Yeah, I think that's always the case. It took XML so long to be able to be adopted, and I think it starts from, it's probably a function of focus on the technology and not the actual business problem. And once we do that, I think that the technology flows through. Options to consider moving forward, I'm going to just swiftly go by here because we're coming at the top of the hour, is, you need to follow a given process, and there are plenty of examples of best practices to do that. So identifying, your information and the modalities of that information, document the processes, look for opportunities where those processes have problems, and then modify them only to meet what you really are having for objectives. And then you can talk about data conversion and how you might apply machine learning to do that. Overall, the biggest thing, and that we see luckily, is that these technologies can be implemented to where you can leverage them across the organization. So don't look at, even though you might start with a project at an insular level, look at the overall organization with the plan to leverage these technologies across different types of business processes. Oh, and so it wouldn't be a sponsorship without having us have a little bit of time to talk about us. I mentioned smart learning just briefly. Smart learning is Parascript's form of combining a number of machine learning technologies that don't just solve the production level problems of automation. So smart learning does what we call reinforcement learning, where it sits in the background and collects data and curates that information so that it can optimize processes over time, improve processes that have already been implemented with respect to document automation, and adapt to things. So if documents change, it can listen and update and learn from that change of information. But the same technology is used to automate the configuration process up front. So we're really, really motivated to not only solve the production types of headaches that you guys are faced with every day, but also easing the adoption of advanced capture by using machine learning to automate things that are typically done manually and typically can take weeks, if not months, to configure and optimize. So I think that's it. And we have some time for questions and answers. So I'll turn it back over to Teresa.
Thank you. And we've been listening to Greg Council and Bill Johnson of Parascript, and had our introduction from Kevin Crane at AIIM. And just have some contact information up here from Parascript. There are some links in the resources, so avail yourself of that. And do want to get to this first question, and Greg, even though you've been on a roll talking away here, I want to direct this first question over to your direction, whether it's you or Bill. Someone is asking, how useful have you found handwriting recognition, and especially the variable handwritten text that's typically not confined to special boxes on a form?
You're asking a question of a vendor. We find it very useful because we create what is arguably the best handwriting recognition on the planet. But let me talk about what the realization is, because we've done surveys around handwriting recognition for well over 10 years, and what we found is what is typically known as ICR, or intelligent character recognition, is not really up to the task. It oftentimes can't even do what is called constrained handwriting recognition where you're using boxes and combs. And so I think a lot of people tried it and were really kind of dismayed or left wanting more because it just wasn't up to the task. There is an art to handwriting recognition, so you do need to plan for it. It does take a lot of considerations, but ultimately, and here's I think the thing you're wanting to understand: how much handwriting can be effectively lifted off a document? Well, how about 80 to 85 to 90% of that data at a very, very high accuracy rate? That's what's capable for handwriting recognition. But the key is pick the right technology and then do the right planning and take the right approach, because it is not OCR.
And to amplify that from a practitioner, because the capability was less than optimal, we designed our processes around the inability to achieve it. But in today's global environment, the documents are terribly complex that include not just the presence of handwriting or a signature, but being able to interpret it now. So the use case is far more prevalent and demands the kind of capability we can provide in handwriting. So I think the maturity of the documents and the complexity of the documents are driving it. Thankfully, we happen to be in a real sweet spot for being able to deliver on it.
And it depends on your application or your particular organization. Ask any lawyer if they believe that handwritten content on a contract or in the margins, scratching things out and all kinds of different little signatures are important, and they'll tell you absolutely. So in terms of information governance and risk and some of those factors, really overlooking or not recognizing handwriting can be, I think, a risk to the organization that is undue, considering now that we have tools, like you mentioned, that will help us capture that and understand that information much more easily than ever before.
I do want to squeeze one more question in, because we really are getting to the end of our time today. And someone's asking, what's a good first step or next step should someone take to go from their existing basic OCR to real straight-through processing automation?
All right.
Great.
Yeah, I'll try to quickly get to that and answer it. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a long answer if you really want the full information, but let's start with it. So straight-through processing involves the ability for a system to be able to discern between data that is most probably accurate versus that which is not. And we do that through tuning a system and looking at individual field by field, or if it's document classification, the answers along with what we call a confidence score. And again, that takes data science. And so it's about having enough representative samples, running the data, the sample data through your configured system, and then observing and analyzing the results so that you can identify what those breakpoints are. That's the only way you do it. And we see a lot of organizations that don't have the expertise or haven't taken the time to do it, and they're stuck manually verifying everything that comes out of the system. So it starts with data science.
Okay. One important thing I do want to let everybody know about, if you haven't seen in the emails that AIIM have been sending out, we are in the process of updating our CIP exam, our Certified Information Professional. And Jesse Wilkins, our director of our certification program, has been heading up this grand endeavor, and we're in the process of beta testing the new exam right now. And we are taking people, allowing people to take the beta exam right now through the end of this month, through April 30th. So if you go to the link that's on the site, or it's also linked in the resources, we invite you to take this CIP beta exam. There's the link on the website, link this directs to, talks about the domain areas on there. If you do have any questions about this, feel free to email Jesse Wilkins at jwilkins@aim.org. He's always welcome to chat with anybody about our CIP exam in certification program in general, but specifically with the beta testers. And I know the preliminary results I've been hearing is that this is with the the updates and the latest with how Jesse has worked with a great team of people to ensure that this is the latest covering our intelligent information management industry. Is something I just encourage you to check out and to participate in our beta exam. Again, that's going on now through the end of this month, so just a little less than a week left for the beta exam. And just want to say that because we are at the end of our webinar time, we have recorded this webcast, and you will be able to catch it again. We're going to email everyone that link to catch it again, because there's a lot of really good and useful information in here. Download the resources. Please take the feedback survey. I greatly value what you have to share with us. Very much want to thank our underwriter, Parascript. Without the support from our solution providers, AIM would not be able to bring you these free educational programs like our webinars. So thank you, Parascript, for your sponsorship. And as we bring this webinar to a close, I want to leave you with our speakers' closing thoughts or key takeaway from today's discussion. I'm going to start first with Kevin Crane from AIM. Your closing thoughts today.
Well, Teresa, as I mentioned at the start, this type of AIM research, I believe, is incredibly important and incredibly credible, since we're talking with real-world practitioners about what they're experiencing currently and where they're looking toward the future. And I think we've covered some really important ground today and presented some important findings. And partners like Parascript help enable that, as you mentioned, by their support of our research. And as a company, they enable many of the benefits and capabilities that we all rely on to make improvements and attain our goals. So for Parascript, I want to say thank you for your participation, and it's been great being a part of this show. And
I also just want to mention that Parascript and AIM, we're going to be in touch with you again because the information that we presented in this webinar is just scratching the surface of all of this research material. An ebook is coming out, an infographic is coming out, so we have more information off of these survey results that we will be sharing with you in the coming weeks. So look for us and look for those emails from Parascript and from AIM about that specifically. So over to the folks at Parascript for their closing thoughts. Let me start with Bill Johnson. Your thoughts today.
Thanks, Teresa. I think if you're sitting on the webinar, and thank you so much for attending, if you're asking yourself, how do I determine if I'm a candidate for advanced capture or not? I think the easy litmus test is if you're capturing documents and doing doc prep, conventional batch capture doc prep, batch cover sheets, barcoded document separator sheets, and key from image for indexing, you are definitely a candidate for advanced capture. And then it's a matter of figuring out who's best for you, because there's a certain amount of human error that's inherent in manual-based processes like that can be eliminated through advanced capture processes. So if you're trying to decide where to start, and because capture is, that's the gate, that's the door that all the information comes through. If you're prepping batches with barcoded separator sheets and doing all of those things, you're definitely a candidate and should explore advanced capture.
Thank you, Bill. And Greg Council, your thoughts, closing thoughts today.
Yeah, I was just I'll be short and sweet. Machine learning and all that AI stuff is definitely coming. It's a wave that is undeniable. And whereas advanced capture is and has always been, to do it properly, a data science first type of project, machine learning is only going to amplify it. So if you're involved or you're planning on applying machine learning to advanced capture, or involved in advanced capture or wondering about it, the first thing you need to do is start collecting data and start making sure that information is as useful and as true as possible, so that you can avail yourselves of these great new capabilities that are out now and will continue to improve.
Thank you, Greg. And thank you, everyone, for your time today. For AIM, this is Teresa Resick, and we will see you with our next webcast. And have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye, everyone.